I'm answering a student question. So, who offers more scholarships in the US? Is it private universities or public universities? Okay, so again, it all depends on which program you're applying for. If you're applying for, say, PhD programs, then there's a equally likely chance that both public universities and private universities are going to fund you. But if you're going to apply for a master's program, it is more unlikely that the private universities do not fund you, and it's more likely that the public universities fund you. So private universities are called private because they're out there to make money. And they look at Asian students as a way to make money. And whether it be Chinese or Indians, they know that Indians and Chinese are getting richer, a lot more money with them. So they opened up a bunch of programs. For example, Carnegie Mellon University has a bunch of master's programs in software, AI, product management, software product management. They got like 10 to 20 programs, and it's purely oriented at some of the Asian folks to come in, and that's a money spinner for them. So these big universities need to spend a lot of money on research and development, and their government funds are coming down. The government is not spending as much on R&D as it did before. So they're increasingly looking at tuition fees as a source of valuable revenue. And they are looking at Asian groups, whether it be China, Japan, Korea, India, to make up for the losses in the income they get from the government. So public universities, the thing is that they have a stronger link with the government. They actively get funded by the government, and governments have a certain number they have to fund for the public universities. And that's not true for the private universities. Private universities are on their own. They do not depend on the government the same way as the public universities are. And because there's a greater guarantee that they're going to get funds from the government, there's going to be less expectations from tuition fees in terms of that compensating for losses in the government not paying for tuition. This is historically the reason why the public universities have been more favorable towards giving tuition. So yes, there is a small difference, but I would say the difference is actually much higher for Americans who want to study for graduate school in the US, because the first preference is always for Americans when it comes to scholarships. Again, look at it from their perspective, like why should they spend money on Asians coming and studying in their country who want full scholarships? So you got to be the best of the best to get scholarships. So when it comes to international students, I would say that the difference between public and private universities is not that big. In fact, I still think there's a slightly higher chances for you to get admitted into public universities with funding compared to private universities, but it's only a small number we are talking about. The other thing to consider is that you're looking at the top 20 rankings. I think a lot of Asians have an hysteria. They have madness over university rankings. They all want to apply to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and so on. So these, if you're looking at the top 20 rankings, the private universities dominate the list. In fact, I would say that the top 2 or top 3 public universities are the University of California, Los Angeles, University of California, Berkeley. So it's the University of California system. And then you have University of Michigan, and then you have University of Wisconsin. So these are the top 4, top 5 universities. So I went to University of Wisconsin myself, and I feel that, yes, the chances of getting funding is definitely more there. But then if you're looking at overall rankings, top 20 rankings or top 30 rankings, many private universities are above it. And again, rankings are not necessarily guided by your chances of getting a job. They are more guided by GRE score, selectivity, and so on. And every university does their own stuff in terms of gaming the ranking system. So public universities, their goals are very different from private universities. So they cannot really compete directly with private universities. In terms of PhD programs, for example, Berkeley, Wisconsin-Madison, or University of California, Los Angeles are comparable to the best of private universities, comparable to Harvard, Stanford, and so on. Like there's no difference at all. And the greatest professors are both in private universities and public universities. There's no real difference in terms of pedagogy or teaching. But again, I think some students are just obsessed with rankings, and they prefer to go to private universities than public universities. So in that way, the public universities tend to get lesser number of applicants than private universities because less people apply to them. They are lower in the rankings. But then if you are careful and you spread your applications to more public universities, I would say that your chances of getting scholarships do go up to a small extent. Again, like I said before, master's funding is going to be very limited. It's almost going to be impossible to get it. But still, compared to almost a zero-like probability in private universities, it's going to be more than zero in public universities. I'm going to stop here. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below. Cheers.